What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another video. Welcome back to Somewhere in the Middle, the podcast where we take very hot topics with polar opposite opinions and we try to find a healthy middle. We try to find whether or not the truth is somewhere in the middle. My name is Lion.
I'm Rob.
And join us today to discuss fasting. We're going to be talking about anywhere from intermittent fasting and kind of going down the line all the way to like
Hardcore, long-term fasting.
Yeah. I was kind of always curious, and I feel like you've always been curious about that too. You've experimented with fasting as well, so I feel like that's going to be an interesting conversation where we maybe gonna dive into maybe some of your experiences firsthand.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what people are saying online and compare it to
Yeah.
like our own experiences because we both kind of like experimented a little bit with it. So interesting to see what people will be saying. Influencers as well as like more scientific people from that community. So yeah, looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah, I feel like this is another like really in line with these types of topics that are really trending right now. Just like our last topic, and if you haven't watched that video, I'm going to put it somewhere up here where you can watch where we talked about cold water exposure and cold plunging. And I feel like fasting, different kinds of fasting, is also a very hot topic. I'm sure that you have, who are watching this right now, maybe seen stuff on online. Maybe even your favorite like celebrities are advocating and talking about it. We just earlier today talked about like the Chris Hemsworth Limitless show, and where he talked about him doing fasting over a few days. So let's get into that. Basically, what we want to like maybe break it down is talk about like intermittent fasting, and then go down into some more hardcore forms of fasting. So let's just go into our reliable source of information, TikTok.
Everybody's number one source of information.
What can you eat or drink during intermittent fasting? Well, I'm glad you asked. These are the top 6 things that I suggest you consume during your fast. Water. Drink as much water as you want, okay? In that water, you can actually add some lemon juice, or apple cider vinegar, okay? Also, black tea or just plain black coffee. If you are keto, you can actually fit in a bulletproof coffee and still technically be fasting. Because the bulletproof coffee is 100% fat, your body is still going to be taking the advantages of the fast without fasting. So technically your fast will be over, but because you're in such a fat burning state, you eating fat will still have you in that ketogenic state. If you're interested in intermittent fasting, or you've already tried intermittent fasting, comment down below and let us.
Okay.
Yeah, so right off the bat, we're starting with what can you add to your, what can you add to your fast in terms of like drinking, or, well, it's mostly drinking, it's all liquids. The bulletproof coffee that you mentioned, that's basically adding butter into your coffee, which she admitted breaks your fast, but then it keeps you in a ketogenic state because you're consuming only fat. So whatever, I mean.
But that kind of seems a little counterintuitive and like counter-effective to me. Like I thought that one of the reasons why you would even try to do intermittent fasting is potentially to lose fat. Yeah. Yet as your body enters that fat burning mode, like why would you want to then immediately replenish the fat?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I'm not going to pretend to be like super knowledgeable about this. But like the thing that you made me just think about was like, what is the reason why you're doing the fast in the first place?
Right.
Is it for weight loss, or is it to feel good? Is it for like longevity effects? Are you doing it regularly? Because it has positive health benefits, or are you doing it for other reasons? I like to keep it simple for myself personally, and not add, like, I don't feel the need to add things like lemon in my water and stuff like that. I want to just like keep it as basic as possible, like as little to think about as I can. And so that's more of my philosophy, just keeping it simple, but to each their own. And I guess you need to try different things, right? Like, if your body reacts to the coffee, with the bulletproof coffee, like that's great. But I don't know.
I'm just curious about like, because to me personally, like if I don't eat, not because I'm maybe even trying to fast, but like if I'm skipping a meal or whatever, like if I like consume anything, even like a very tiny amount, like that makes me way more hungry. Like I rather not eat at all, and I feel like just like your body doesn't ask for more food. Like if you're fasting, or if you're just like, not eating because, I don't know, you're too busy, you're like, studying for finals, you're working, and just don't, like, if you consume something small, I feel like it just makes you way hungrier. So if, like,
Yeah, I
if you
agree.
consume a piece of candy, or even like drink a little bit of like, something with calories like juice or whatever, like I feel like it just makes you way hungrier instead of not. So like to consume these things, I feel like it just makes the fast harder.
Yeah, I mean, like think about somebody who's like trying to. I mean, it's not really 100% comparable, but somebody who's trying to quit smoking, for example, are they gonna just have like one cigarette? It's gonna make it like very
Or like
hard
one
for them to,
puff,
yeah, or one,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
It's a temptation.
yeah.
So like, yeah, I find that it's better to just avoid all temptation. It's like, if you're trying to cut out desserts and you're in front of the dessert buffet, you're gonna have one cookie, like that's gonna be really tough rather
Right,
than just
especially like
like
you're fasting and then you're
staying
going to
away.
the fridge and like getting your butter out and then like cutting it on your cutting board, and then you can see your fruit bowl, and then you see other things, and I feel like it's just like temptation, like you said, um, I don't know what are the real benefits. Like, I don't know if it's, have you ever tried bulletproof coffee? Is this
Yeah,
as delicious
I'm not
as
a fan.
she?
I prefer just
Oh,
having it black, to be
okay.
honest. But
Okay. I mean, maybe that's something that we should have started and maybe talk about a little bit more. Like, what are the benefits? Like, what are the at least alleged benefits of like intermittent fasting?
yeah,
I guess people talk about like very different things, anywhere from like weight loss and fat loss, which
yeah.
is something that people talk about a lot, to also like just being healthier, or like longevity, living longer, just
Hmm.
because you're intermittent fasting. Are there any other like potential health benefits that
I think those
you
are the
know
two
of?
big ones.
Yeah.
But getting down into like the health benefits and longevity stuff, um, a lot of it comes down to giving your body time to replenish and replace like damaged cells or unhealthy cells that it wouldn't necessarily be able to do if it was always consuming food and digesting, because I guess your body has a certain amount of processes that it can complete at once. So when you remove digesting food from the equation, then it
Right.
has more available to do maintenance work that it can't do otherwise.
Yeah. I never thought about it like that. Like just giving it a break from processing food, to be honest with you. Okay, let's watch another one.
If you're doing intermittent fasting and it's not working, stop doing this one thing. The biggest mistakes I see with intermittent fasting is that women who are already under eating, when they go to try intermittent fasting, now they are grossly under eating. And ladies, I'm talking about under 1,200 calories. 1,200 calories is not even enough for a 3-year-old, for a toddler. And so what happens when you chronically under eat like that, you are absolutely slowing your metabolism down. So it's critical, whether or not you intermittent fast or not, it's critical that you get enough food to support your metabolism. And especially if you intermittent fast, pay attention to how much food you're getting.
Okay, so I guess that makes sense. Like the whole point of intermittent fasting is not to just potentially eat less, but eat at like the right times, but maybe also more importantly, just allow your body in between meals to go into like a state where it like burns fat and like maybe like heals itself, like we mentioned
Yeah.
before.
And at the beginning, when she said if you're doing intermittent fasting and it's not working, I guess what she's referring to is like losing weight. Like if you're not losing weight while you're doing it, if that's what she means by not working, I don't know what else she might mean. But so that video seems to be directed for like women in particular who are trying to lose weight by intermittent fasting. And I've heard other things about how it isn't necessarily the best for women all the time.
Okay.
Biologically, obviously, there's differences between men and women, and with their cycles and whatnot. I haven't gotten into the weeds with that because I've just been mostly focused on the benefits for myself. But yeah, I know a lot of people use it for weight loss, and for sure, it isn't something where you need to be starving yourselves. Like you do need to get in the appropriate amount of calories within that window where you're eating. So yeah, that little clip makes sense.
If you wake up in the morning and you do not like to eat, you're not hungry,
Yeah.
is probably because your blood sugar is very, very low. It's probably because you have very good blood sugar regulation. So then what happens is you wake up in the morning, you're fasted, you don't feel like eating, your blood sugar continues to trend down.
Okay.
You eat late in the morning or early in the afternoon and it skyrockets, right? This is why you have an energy slump between 2 and 4 in the afternoon.
But this is also when you're powered by glucose.
This is when you're powered by
when you're not on
glucose.
ketogenic.
Right, when you're not on ketos.
Okay.
Ketogenic. So you don't want your blood sugar to look like a heart monitor. You want your blood sugar to look like rolling hills.
Yeah.
So some of the best things that these women can do is get 20 to 30 grams of protein within 30 minutes of waking.
Okay.
Because remember that a prolonged period of low blood sugar will be perceived by the pituitary gland as starvation, and it will begin to throttle back your metabolism.
Okay.
All right. Well, he's saying he's recommending eating protein first thing in the morning to prevent the glucose spike when you eat food, like after a prolonged period of time. So that's technically breaking the fast when you get up in the morning.
Yeah, no, I don't think he's advocating for like the intermittent fasting where you would not eat during the day. I think like in the morning, I think that he actually advocates for the opposite of like waking up in the morning and within 30 minutes, which is like a pretty short window. That means like you pretty much just wake up, take a shower, and then just get right into eating. And then he would recommend 30 grams of protein. Like 30 grams of protein, that's a pretty decent amount of protein in the morning and
like,
especially for women. I feel like that's just, I mean, 30 grams of protein, like it's like a full chicken breast. That's like the equivalent of like a chicken breast. Like an average egg would probably have around like 5 to 6 grams of protein. So like we're talking about like 5 eggs, or like it's a pretty like in
It's a
terms of
hefty,
protein, like a hefty,
amount.
hearty like kind of meal. Because again, like it's a considerable piece of like even like red meat, or like what else would you eat in the morning, right? Like I would assume if it is eggs, 30 grams of protein with just eggs, that's like about like 5 eggs or so.
So then what would happen if instead of doing that first thing in the morning, let's say you wanted to continue your fast and then you have that for your first meal, like the protein, but like later on, would you still have the same spike that he's talking about, an energy crash in the afternoon? Like if that's what you did?
Well, the way I mean, I don't know, because I don't know if it'll affect that much. Like, let's say if you wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning and within 30 minutes you would have 30 grams of protein. So let's assume for a second, like you have like eggs in the morning, you have a chicken breast. I know that some people would even like in the morning, what they do to get that protein is they just supplement it with like a shake or something.
Yeah.
That's way easier. Like you would get a scoop of protein and that would on average be like 25 to 30 grams of protein within that one scoop. So that's right there, what he recommends, your recommended protein intake. Yet I don't think that it has a huge effect on how you would feel all by itself at 2 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Like I think that what you would have for lunch then would have a much bigger effect. Like, so if I have that 30 grams of protein, but then I would have like a very like carb, like I would have pasta, let's say, for lunch, I think that I would still get that slump. Because my blood sugar just will spike based on what I had for lunch, regardless of what I had for breakfast.
Yeah. So about the afternoon crash, this is not really related to fasting, but it's just a tip that I picked up that I've been kind of trying out.
Yeah.
Is because I used to drink coffee first thing in the morning. Like as
Okay.
soon as I got up, I would even preset it the night before so that it was like ready when I got out of bed. It was
Okay.
like the first thing. Within minutes, I had coffee in my system.
Yeah.
But I heard that it's better to wait like an hour if after you wake up to have coffee, because it allows for the hormones in your body to regulate themselves, and you actually allow your body to wake up instead of jolting it with caffeine, because then your body doesn't go through the natural waking up process. That gets like deferred, and that stuff stays in your system until later on in the afternoon, which after the caffeine wears off, then you're still dealing with the
like your body's going, it's
sleep
morning
hormones.
time.
Yeah.
Oh.
You're getting that crash because you haven't processed that stuff out of your system yet. So that's actually been legitimately working for me. Like I've been drinking a glass of water first thing in the morning, and then have coffee like maybe an hour later after I wake up, and I have no more afternoon crashes. So that's a weird tangent that not strictly related to fasting, but something that I've tried that's working pretty well.
Okay, so you would feel okay just based on what you had in the morning, then would then have a only that would have an effect on your afternoon crash.
Yeah.
Not necessarily what you had for lunch. Like so, like it doesn't matter what you would consume. I guess you haven't really like tested it, you know, like
Yeah, well, my habits lately, I have been eating breakfast, so my fasting, because I usually eat dinner around 5:30, like 6 o'clock, right?
yeah.
So then I don't generally eat in the evening or at night, and then if I'm hungry in the morning, I might have breakfast like around 9 or 10, something
Okay.
like that. So like that's been my routine lately. I
Mm-hmm.
used to do more prolonged fasting, so like I would only eat after lunch
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. But I haven't been so diligent with that lately, and this has been working for me, like so far.
Okay. Okay. I mean, it's interesting. Like we're sitting together. Like I've only had coffee. I've tried coffee one time in my entire
You've
life.
only tried
One
coffee
time.
one time?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I've actually like I was at a friend's house and he like was raving about like me. He was drinking like Turkish coffee and he was like this super. He was like in one of those like tiny cups. It
Like
wasn't
an
like a
espresso thing?
yeah espresso. I'm not an expert, so like he's like you gotta try it, you gotta try it, you gotta try it. And then his wife came out and like she was like you gotta try this. It's like so good, so good. And I was like all right, fine. Like good. I just did it to be nice, and I had like a little sip, and I'm pretty sure like as most people maybe have coffee for the first time, it just was very,
Well, it's an acquired taste.
it wasn't very
They
good,
said.
so I didn't really, like it. But otherwise, I never had like it's some people like hold it against me. Like I've had like during the summertime, you would have like an iced cappuccino or something, But I don't.
That's
I
not
personally
really,
don't
that's not
consider that
coffee.
as coffee. Like
No,
that just tastes like
it's a milkshake.
like a milkshake. Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
like
So,
dessert.
but I mean, I'm sure it has coffee in it. But like coffee, just I have never really had aside from that
Wow,
one
that's
time.
that's that's amazing to me. So what, like, you just don't need uh you don't feel tired in the morning, you don't feel like you could
Never.
use a boost or something like that?
Never ever in the morning. I just feel like I wake up and I'm like ready to go. Like I never have the one of the main reasons why I didn't is because I didn't want to have that, and again, this is like a different subject, but I used to like one of my first jobs. I used to work with a lot of like, people who were in their 30s and 40s and 50s, and
Yeah.
this was their career, and I was there like part time while I was going to school, and I was like kind of observing, and I just like noticed how like hooked they were on caffeine. Like no, don't go on break yet. Before you go, like I have to go and get my coffee, and then you can go because I can't. Like if I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna go for half an hour. Like no, I have to go now. Like I need to have my coffee, and just that dependence on caffeine
Scared you?
just like not only scared me, but it was such a like it was a turnoff, and I was like, I never want to touch that stuff because I never want to get to a point where I'm this hooked on something and something has such a strong hold on me. Like I don't want to have that, and I just basically never, experimented with that. I never got into it, and
Yeah.
honestly, like I just feel like with so many things, like it's a question of habit. If you always wake up and you have breakfast, or you always wake up and you have coffee, then your body just gets used to the fact that it needs it. Because so for so many people, like including like just getting back to today's topic, like when it came to intermittent fasting, like I feel like a lot of it really comes down to a question of habit. Like if you've always had breakfast and then one morning you woke up and you decided, you know what, I'm just going to intermittent fast, you are obviously going to feel like you need food and that you're not going to have a good time, and you're probably not going to have mental clarity because your body's going to be like, where's the food, just because of the habit,
Yeah.
and I feel like it just takes a little bit of time for someone to get it out of their system, and then you don't need it anymore. Just
Well,
like with coffee, I'm
That's
assuming.
That's the thing. Like it's easy to build a dependence on things like caffeine. We should do an episode on caffeine
Yeah.
and coffee. That would be a good one. But I think it's also good to throw your body a curveball once in a while, and that's why I like I've done a prolonged fast. Like I did a 72-hour fast with a friend.
Okay.
And that was just because he asked me one day, "Hey, you want to do this? Like I want to try it out. You want to do it with me
Yeah.
at the same time?" And I was like, "Okay." Like I didn't know what I was getting myself into, and I went into it with the mindset like, maybe I'll give up halfway through. I don't know what it's going to be like. Well, we'll see. And then I made it 72 hours, and it was I drank water, black coffee, and tea, and I made it, and it was like a little bit difficult for the first day and a half, and then after that, it kind of just like you feel like you get past the hard part.
Yeah.
You stop feeling hunger in the same way that you did before, and the hunger comes in waves. So it's
Okay.
not like consistent hunger. And I think that's what freaks a lot of people out is like they start feeling hungry and they think it's going to keep getting worse and worse until I eat something, right? And then they cave and they eat something. But no, it's more like it comes in and goes in waves. And it never really gets that bad. So like after 2 days, like the third day was actually easier than the second day I found. And then by the time I ended it, I was like, okay, well, I guess it's time to eat now. Like I wasn't starving, like, like I could devour a huge meal. I had to ease myself back into it.
Yeah.
And it felt really good. Yeah, so that was,
Okay, so anything like you were living your life the same exact way. So you
yeah.
worked during that time. You like I don't know. Maybe
I did it on
you
a weekend.
exercise? Did you go to the gym? Did you like?
I did go to the gym. I started it on a Friday, and then I went through Saturday, and I broke the fast on Sunday night. So really, it was a Thursday night until Sunday night.
Sunday night,
Last
yeah.
meal was Thursday night. Then I did Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Okay.
And I went through the whole weekend as I normally do. It's like, family,
Yeah.
kids, and stuff like that. I just did the normal routine, but I didn't eat anything. So my
Did you
wife was like,
consume-
she was like, how are you doing this? Like, she didn't understand. Like, why would you do this? Why would you put yourself through this? But I did feel a sense of mental clarity, and it was like a
Oh,
cool
you did. Okay.
experience.
Tell
Yeah.
us. Okay. Tell me about that. Yeah.
I mean, there's not that. I mean, I think we'll see other people talking about that, but I don't know. You just kind of have. It's not like I wouldn't say euphoria. That's too strong of a word, but just like a nice calmness about you, and you just. It's like a sense of calm, I guess. That's
Do you
how
feel
I
like
would
there's any
describe it.
decisions, like life decisions or important decisions that, would you recommend to someone who's going through like maybe some difficult times, like they don't know what to do in certain situations, just to like starve themselves for a little while or like go on a fasting just to get that mental clarity
I
and,
recommend-
and make better decisions?
I recommend just challenge yourself once in a while to people who are going through struggles and stuff like that,
Yeah.
because like when you're dealing with adversity, you start to look at the world differently. So do a fast if you want to, run a half marathon if you want to,
Right.
go do something like outrageous that you wouldn't normally do, and that puts you into a whole different mindset. So I like to do those types of things.
Okay, so
once
there's a
in while.
calm, but you wouldn't say like you like literally like had like revelations about like certain things that
No,
are
it
going
wasn't
on throughout your
It
life.
wasn't like a
because you were-
psychedelic experience or anything
Right,
like
right.
that.
No,
It wasn't
but-
like I was on mushrooms or anything, but it did have like a good impact on me, and I felt like it was a mental reset as much as a physical reset.
You mentioned that you were also with your family and your wife. Like, did you feel or did she feel that you were maybe a little more short-tempered or a little, more hangry during
No,
that time?
I tried to keep the hanger under control, and it wasn't too big of a problem. You're only really hungry for like short-ish periods
Yep.
of time. So the hardest part is when everybody else is sitting down for a meal
and you're not, yeah.
you're not. It's like, it's like, well, what do I do with myself?
Also, the social like aspect of just like not sitting at the table.
There's the social aspect. I think that turns a lot of people off. And then on the flip side, if you don't have family or people to be around, like
Yeah.
whatever your social situation is, something that my friend also mentioned to me is that if you're doing intermittent fasting, you wouldn't believe the amount of time that you save not preparing food for yourself 3 times a day. Like if you go down to 2 meals or even 1, you're saving time doing dishes, cooking, grocery shopping, all of these things. There's intangible things that you don't realize until you actually do it, and then you're gaining hours of your day out of thin air.
Too bad that we have to eat. Well, that's so true. That's not something that I've seen anybody talk about, but like the amount of time that you save, and not only time, but also like decision making. Like I know that maybe like a 20-minute conversation, like almost every single day, is like, okay, so what are we gonna eat today? Okay, so what are we gonna have for dinner? And then you gotta also have to figure out like, what about your child? Like, because they often don't eat the exact same stuff that you eat, or they like specific things and they don't like specific things. So like organizing that and just discussing that, and then defrosting certain things, and then all of that kind of stuff. Like it just takes
It's
an
mental
enormous
energy.
amount of time.
It's
Yeah, and
mental
mental
energy
energy and
spent.
just time that you could otherwise. But unfortunately or fortunately, we gotta eat at some point. I mean, this is only a temporary thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we get it back to the videos, anything else that you wanted to share based on your like personal experience? Anything specifically that you found like either good or bad? Were there any side effects? Anything that you were like, you know what, I didn't really like this about intermittent like so far everything was positive. The fact that you said that you weren't hangry, you had mental clarity, you felt calm, you saved a whole lot of time. You mentioned that the negatives were potentially not being able to like sit, or you feel inadequate because you're not at the table with your family having all of these meal 2-3 times a day. But otherwise, any negative?
Yeah, one negative.
Okay.
And this is it's a bit gross. I apologize, but I had constipation issues
Oh, you
for
did?
a few
Okay.
days afterwards. That might have been because I did something wrong. I'm not sure. I took activated charcoal
Yeah.
towards the end. I was told that that's helpful in getting
To
through the last
clearing
day.
your system out.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I also then found out that could
Constipated, yeah.
constipate. So like there was a good week of like really bad, issues afterwards.
Because it's what's supposed to do, like the activated charcoal is supposed to go and grab onto like all of these things in your system, and it adheres to them to potentially allow it to leave, but maybe like by adhering to them, it creates that.
I think so. Something like
Constipation,
that happened.
yeah.
I think also maybe I wasn't getting enough electrolytes and stuff like that because I really literally only had coffee and tea and water. So I didn't take any salt, I didn't take any electrolytes. So that might have been a
Did you
small
consume
error.
more liquid during that time than
Yeah.
you normally would?
Yeah, I tried to stay really hydrated.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, not because you wanted to, because you felt like you just
Um,
had to.
It was something to do, like when you do feel hungry, it's like, okay, grab some water, like fill your stomach with
Yeah.
something, that kind of
Yeah, that's
helps.
what I was curious about. If you just
Yeah.
like decided to fill up your stomach with like liquids
Yeah.
because you couldn't eat food. Okay. Interesting. All right, let's watch another video.
A few questionable things in there. I don't know what that liquid she poured from the container into the cap
Yeah, me
was.
neither.
I don't know what that was. And I spotted some Coke and Sprite or whatever.
Yeah, Coke Zero or Sprite or like coffee from Starbucks. It has that's not.
That wasn't black coffee from Starbucks.
That wasn't
either.
black coffee either. You could see that it has either milk or cream or something in it because it was lighter in color. So you know that it wasn't like a. So yeah, stuff like that. I think that's something that a lot of people just have to be aware of, just because it's like liquid. Because I've even seen people like say like, oh, I'm fasting, but they only have like they drink like juices, or it's like a shake or some sort of like, you're not really fasting. I mean, it's cool that you might do that and that might work in other ways for
You might
your
get
diet.
some of
or-
the benefits,
Yeah.
but you're not getting all of the benefits. And again, it comes down to, why are you doing it? Like, do you want? Is it because you only want to feel a little bit lighter, not eating food and stuff like that,
Yeah.
or is it because you want to go the whole 9 yards and experience like all the health benefits? You gotta choose.
Yeah.
A lot of people ask me how I fast. So because you asked, here it is. I do the 16-8 method. Eat for 8 hours, fast for 16. A good way to think of it is you're skipping breakfast. It's a great method for beginners, and it's especially good for weight loss, diabetes, and anything related to insulin resistance. The most common approach is having all your food between noon and 8 p.m. at night. At 8 p.m., you stop eating, you begin your fast, and you fast overnight. So a lot of that time is spent sleeping. In the morning, you wake up and you skip breakfast and you fast until noon. The final hours of your fast, hours 12 to 16, this period of time right here from when you wake up until noon, that is when your body is in fat burning mode. That's why it's so important to skip breakfast. If you put food in your system, it stops the fat burning. Now, fasting doesn't mean calorie deficit. Make sure you're getting the proper calorie intake. If you don't get enough calories to support your metabolism slows down, and you don't want that.
Yeah, but that's one of the most common methods, the 16-8, right?
Yeah, that's the simplest and easiest. There was somebody in the comments of that video, I don't know if you noticed, that mentioned that they literally do it unintentionally because they just skip breakfast. And that's something that so many people just do. Again, just because they either don't feel very hungry. Some people do that for the lack of time. They just literally wake up in the morning, put their clothes on, take a shower, and just like rush to work, and only really get to sit down and eat like for their lunch hour at
Yeah.
noon. So they would automatically just skip that. The only thing that you have to remember is that you can't consume any food after 9 p.m. at night. So like that, so it makes up the whole, so if you tend to like stay late up at night and snack, that's not really, fasting or
Yeah.
intermittent fasting.
I wanted to talk about breakfast though, because
Okay.
you remember how they used to say that breakfast was the most important meal of the day?
Yeah.
And then at some point that changed.
Yeah.
And like, what was that point where we realized no, breakfast is not
I don't think
necessarily.
that everybody realized that, because I'm sure that there are still like, doctors out there, whatever. I've like not that recently, but I remember I had this conversation with my family doctor a few years ago, and he's still, is completely supporting. Is like, oh, it's the most important meal of the day. It's literally when you wake up, after your body has been, for like 8 hours or however long you sleep, has been in a state of like not consuming and not getting any nutrients. It would really be super important for you to like nourish the body, in the morning.
I started to think at a certain point that that was like propaganda from the breakfast cereal companies, like,
Yeah, there's so
like
many people talk about that. Yeah,
influencing
yeah, yeah,
people's
yeah.
behavior to say, oh, it's a part of a balanced breakfast.
Right.
You gotta fuel yourself, right? And how much of the marketing for certain
Yeah.
products was that the
Yeah.
focus of like you get up in the morning and
Yeah.
you gotta like fuel yourself right away. But a lot of the health experts now, that's not even part of the conversation at all. Like it's really not like, and we spoke about this earlier about um, generations ago, like when
Right.
before we had all of the modern conveniences that we have now, like humans were not getting up and pouring a bowl of cereal in the morning. They had to go and like actually like kill an animal, and like make food and stuff like that. It wasn't happening at the snap of your fingers every morning. So it probably wasn't natural for thousands of years for people to eat as soon as they got up in the
Right, the
morning.
whole idea that, as human beings and also like literally any other animal in the kingdom, they don't just wake up and have like food on a plate in front of them. They would have to either gather or hunt or do whatever in order to get the food, in order to be able to consume it. And this is kind of like where the whole conversation about like mental clarity comes in. Like, and I've seen so many videos and people talking and advocating for that, saying that the reason why you have a lot of mental clarity, it's because you are supposed to do like the best, the best work that you do, just like, you're hunting and everything. Like if you would like, like a tiger doesn't hunt on a full stomach. It's lazy and it just wants to sleep and relax, and it's not really, alert when it's satiated and full, right? Like all these other animals, like they would be at most of their alert, doing their best work and being the most like productive when they are hungry before they consume food. And people basically saying that it should be, or it is biologically the equivalent for human beings, where we would be more productive at work, that we would have more mental clarity, that we would make better decisions, and would just be a lot more awake and alert before we eat our first meal of the day. So again, that goes completely against what like our doctors or like these commercials and cereals and all that. I honestly don't know if there's again, whether the truth is somewhere in the middle there, or if it's one or the other. I mean, I can see the because even as like someone who has been like going to the gym for a long time and like been around the bodybuilding community and in the bodybuilding community for quite some time, this is another thing that we used to like there's a huge school of thought that says like you'd never want to allow your body to go into a state where it's like lacking any sort of nutrients or food or whatever, that you literally want to feed yourself every 3 hours. Like I've maybe ashamed at this point to say, but I know a lot of people, and I've also myself have consumed like protein shakes in the middle of the night. Like literally, I used to like some people used to wake themselves up, literally put alarms at like midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning to wake up and just consume a shake, just to forbid their body to ever be able to go into that state where they are potentially like burning and consuming their own bodies, right?
That's
Because the last thing that you
interesting.
want to happen is for your body to come to a point where it's consuming the muscle if you're trying to build it.
Right. But then there's a trade-off too, because they say how sleep is so important for recovery when you're training hard.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
you're sacrificing a little bit of that to wake yourself up, to interrupt your sleep cycle, to put more food into your body, which is then digesting while you're sleeping. So it's also affecting the quality of your sleep. So like there's got to be some trade-off somewhere. And I'm not a bodybuilding expert, but I'm just interested in that thought process that people go through. Because yeah, I've seen stuff like that too, like documentaries and stuff about bodybuilders and like all of the crazy things that they
Yeah, because you would consume like first thing in the morning, and then I used to consume like a protein shake, and then like literally within like an hour after that, I was having my first meal, and that was like a pretty full meal, 4 or 5, maybe 6 eggs with potatoes and like some other things, like a really like whole and that was like at 9 a.m. and then I used to get to work, and then consume
have second breakfast.
like literally the second breakfast
like a hobbit.
before lunch. And then exactly, and then you have a second lunch literally at 3 p.m. Like around that time, I used to like have usually like I used to eat like a whole pack of like cottage cheese, because it's like packed with like protein and stuff. So I used to like consume the whole thing with the fruit, and that was like my second lunch. And then I used to again 5 o'clock have another meal, then go to the gym, come back home and have a protein shake, and then I would have another meal at night before going to bed. And then you would also like I would basically stay up at night up until like midnight just so I can have another protein shake. Don't get me wrong, I put on weight. Like that's undeniable, I put on weight. Now, was it the best way to put on weight? I don't know. Like you spend a lot of time, like you said before, spend a lot of time throughout your day making this food. Obviously, like meal prepping was like a huge thing, but also just like always thinking about food. Like you have to like, build your day around consuming food, then washing dishes, because all of these meals, like you got to wash all these dishes. So yeah, like you would consume a lot of time.
And spending a lot of money on extra food.
Yeah.
Also,
I didn't even
right?
talk about like the fact that it's expensive to obviously eat this much. But don't get me wrong, I put on weight. Now, whether that was all lean weight or it was just like it was a lot of calories, obviously. Like you have to make sure that you also are very active. So if you're doing this and your life is like an office worker and you just basically like sit for most of your day, I don't think that that's a very good. Yeah.
But at the time you were like killing yourself at the gym, right? So that was the goal. It was like to get big.
I was working out 6 and 7 times a week, and sometimes I was working out twice a day, and I was also including like yoga into my day. So I was basically like very active. So it wasn't crazy. But to be honest with you, I was never hungry, and I did not enjoy most of the food that I ate. Even if it was good food that I actually like liked, I wasn't enjoying it anymore because like you literally ate 2 hours ago or 2.5 hours ago. And then you have to consume again. And I'll be honest with you, like sometimes I would even skip because I was like, I just can't. It's just too much.
Yeah, I've heard people who put on a lot of muscle say that the hard part was not lifting weights in the gym. The hard part was eating that much food.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it was exactly. You're basically fighting a completely different game where you're just literally trying to down this amount of food. And again, there's a lot of people who would advocate against that and say like how horrible it is for like your organs and your liver and all of these stuff, like to just be constantly, and your stomach to just be constantly in the mode of digesting food, because this is like, and again, they say that it's very unnatural because you're definitely not supposed to eat. And like there's a whole point about like listening to your body, right? And saying like your body does not want to, and it never gets used to it either. Like it's still, like I did that for months on end, and it was exactly the same at the very beginning on day one as it was on like, at the end when I stopped doing that. My body still did not want to consume that much food.
So why did you end up stopping in the end?
Honestly, like I just this was like me prepping for like just it was like my bulking season, and I was just like trying to put on
so
a
it was like
lot
a
of
cycle
weight.
that you were going
And then yeah, exactly, it was a cycle. And then like once I was going to like the cutting period, like they cut a lot of the meals I was having, and like a lot of the stuff like that I was consuming, like the snacks in between meals, they disappeared because a lot of them were either fruit or like things with like that have sugar, like even natural sugar, and that kind of like goes completely off your menu when you are trying to cut. So once I did that, I just kind of like never really got back into the crazy multiple meal a day, and I just never got back to it. And honestly, at that point, it turned me off so much that I completely changed my diet after that. Like I have not consumed since that time any sort of supplements either. Like besides the food too, this is something that it's not really related to what we're talking about right now, but I was also consuming like a whole lot, and this is what made it extremely expensive, like way more than the food, is the supplements. Because beyond just the the food and like like whey protein and stuff like that, I was consuming like glutamine and creatine and a whole lot of vitamins every day and like all of these things, because I was like really just like I'm in a full mode. I used to have a trainer back then, so I basically just like whatever is on the paper, I eat. I just buy and I eat and I consumed, and the supplements were probably the most expensive part. So the fact that it was super expensive, the fact that I was just very tired of like eating all the time, yeah, it was enough for me to just like never get back to it.
Oh, that's totally fair. But cool that you experimented with that.
Yeah, that's a completely different experience than what we're talking about today, where you would go and try not to consume.
But related to what we were talking about, and maybe this will lead into one of the next videos, when you spoke about bodybuilders having the fear of like their like any chance of them consuming their own like muscles because they're hungry or whatever, that doesn't seem to be a concern either for most people who are talking about intermittent fasting. And that's something that we've heard a lot about. And one of the arguments for not skipping meals is that you don't want your body to start or that your metabolism is going to slow down if you start skipping meals. But it doesn't seem like that, like I guess that's been blown out of proportion, because all these people talking about intermittent fasting now, the metabolism slowing down isn't even part of the equation. Like that's not a question. Yes, it'll happen over long periods of time, like if you really put yourself in a serious calorie deficit, but for daily fasting periods where you're getting enough calories during that window, it seems to be the consensus that your metabolism won't be affected in a negative way.
Right. Yeah, so like I said, there's very like contradicting opinions when it comes to that, because I remember like the rule of thumb that I used to remember and really work by is a 3 hour. That was and this is, I don't have the specific number in front of me, but that was like literally the rule of thumb, and I remember it like it was literally just carved into my brain that after a 3 hour period is where your body enters the stage where it goes, I'm hungry. Even though you don't feel like you're hungry, it just goes, I'm hungry, and then it starts consuming. And the first thing that it starts consuming is like the most, like the easiest thing to consume apparently is not your fat, is your muscles. And this is like the biggest like nightmare for a bodybuilder, to like spend all that money and time and sacrifices to like work out at the gym and the diet and all that, and then like your body consuming that muscle that you worked so hard to
Which
build.
for a bodybuilder would make sense, because they don't have that much fat on them, but they have got all this extra muscle that their body's probably like, what is this doing here? Of course I'm going to use this first.
I remember I was going into like surgery one time, like to remove my tonsils, and I remember, and this was like at my prime. I was like a lot heavier back then, and then I remember like the doctor just looked at me, and then I'm there in like that robe, and like so like you're kind of exposed a lot of your body, and she goes, oh, you're going to be just fine. You have plenty of reserve. And that literally like the worst thing that I was fearing to hear. I was like, no, like I'm gonna lose all that stuff that I worked so hard for. And she looked at me, she's like, great, you have a lot of reserve of like that muscle that's going to be basically used, because once you have that surgery, like one of the things that I don't know if you ever you stop eating,
Yeah, I never had my tonsils out.
You literally have to like swallow things, and like if your tonsils are removed, like first of all you're not hungry, and second of all like you just can't eat.
Tragedy.
So yeah, and it's like for a whole like over like I think like almost 2 weeks, like you really can't really eat a lot of like, so yeah. Okay.
Intermittent fasting, one of the hottest topics, yet so much confusion about it. So I wanted to outline 3 steps to ensure that you're doing intermittent fasting correctly. First is to understand that water, tea, and coffee are allowed on an intermittent fast as long as there's no sugar or creamer in them. The next rule has to do with what supplements are allowed and which are not allowed, and B vitamins, electrolytes, minerals, and omega-3s are encouraged on an intermittent fast and beneficial, while bone broth and protein powder should be avoided as they break the intermittent fast. Last rule has to do with when you should eat. So the research shows that 14 to 16 hours fasting gives you lots of benefits, so you want to try to push it up to 14 to 16 hour mark and eat only when you feel like you're hungry. Share this video with someone who's trying to learn more about intermittent fasting.
Yep, seems like all good tips.
Yeah, so it's like very similar to what we talked about before. So like that whole like 16-8 split is what kind of what he talked about. He talked about 14 to 16, but like yeah, 16-8 is a very popular split. So like you eat noon to 8 o'clock, and then from 8 all the way to noon again. The next day is where you fast. So like you eat for 8 hours, you fast for 16, like a very kind of basic. I know some people go and take it to the next level. I know some people take it to either like 20 and 4 hours. So like they eat for 4 hours or within the 4 hour window, and then they would fast for the 20 hour window.
Yeah. I feel like with that, like, are they trying to get all of those calories into that 4 hour window?
The
Like,
idea is
that's-
yes, not to undereat. The idea is to get all these calories, but within only that short
that
amount of
becomes a
time.
little bit like tricky, right? Because then you have to watch like what are you eating, you know, because if you're eating more calorie dense foods, or you're just eating like a lot of food, but it's in a short period of time. So like it's a little bit trickier to manage there probably.
This is something actually like a friend of mine that I know really well. That's what he does. So he would basically wait all the way till like he works a 9 to 5 job. So he would basically come back from work, and that dinner that he would normally have with his family, that would be his only meal. So like he would wait until like 5:30, 6-ish, and then that would be his window. That's the 4 hours. So between 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock at night, that's where he would eat. He said, and I kind of asked him that question because like if you're just trying to consume all of these calories within such a like within one pretty much one meal, you would tend to just like eat a lot. You know, 'cause
Yeah.
think about it. Like it would be like if you have 2 meals, then you're now trying to eat that within one. If you have three, that's 3 meals that you're trying to eat within one sitting. That's just like a lot of food. And if you put all that in your body, like you tend to just like completely crash afterwards. So one thing that he told me is like, well, since it's like literally in the evening, so he doesn't have to work at this time. Like, you know, it's pretty much, he's done with his day for the most part. Like, he's like, I don't care because I don't really do a lot of, you know, things at this point that would be very, you know, demanding. He doesn't have to work or whatever. So it's like, that's okay. And two, he said that I would even that 4 hours, he would break it into a couple of meals and not just a single. So
Okay,
he
that
would
makes
have dinner with his family like he normally would. But then 2 hours later,
Have something else.
he would have another meal. And that would be like, so he's breaks it down into like 2 meals, so he doesn't have to feel like he's, you know, just eating like crazy.
Yeah.
Y'all, last week I did a 5-day water fast, and I really want you to watch this video because I was not expecting to have such a profound experience. And this is why I'm gonna recommend to every single one of you, if you're medically able, please try this at least once in your life. Days 1 and 2 were pretty difficult. I started feeling a lot of hunger. I had low energy, fatigue. I was a little bit hangry, and I just was kind of having a little bit of difficulty pushing through. I am so happy that I did though, because on day 3, after about 72 hours without food, I had this massive mental breakthrough happen. And it happened like right after I was feeling my worst. It was like I had this shift right at the 72-hour point that made me rethink my entire life. Fasting is amazing for your body because once your liver burns through all of the glycogen stores, you start using fat for fuel and get into a state of ketosis. Also, your body starts clearing out old damaged cells that they don't need anymore that might be causing issues in your body during a process called autophagy, basically cleaning out your entire system and replenishing brand new stem cells that go to different parts of your body and make brand new cells. So it really feels like you have a new body after doing this experience. Also, my gut completely reset itself to the point where after my 5-day fast, I had a flat stomach, I had no bloating. I felt amazing once I started reintroducing food back in very slowly. I'll make another video about how to refeed, but I just felt physically great. I lost body fat. I felt really toned, but the main thing that I noticed was mental clarity. If you are in a stage of life where you're feeling stuck, where you're feeling unsure, where you don't feel good in your body, where you might be having skin issues, gut issues, and you just feel kind of generally bogged down, refraining from eating is an incredible experience to reset your entire system. I'm gonna be doing a series on fasting because I'm so freaking passionate about it, and I'm so proud of myself for actually getting through this. So
the mental clarity thing is like the really interesting one. It makes me think that I maybe stopped mine right as I was starting to like get into that phase. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, and I always bring this up too because I've heard different things. I mentioned this before, like between men and women. And it's like 5 days seems long. And like the other video that about the girl who was talking about the side effects, like the menstrual cycle stuff. Like I really can't talk about that because I'm no expert, but I know there are experts out there, like Dr. Rhonda Patrick talks about fasting a lot. She loves it, but that the protocols are different for men and women.
So in hours 12 to 18, this is when the fat burning begins. Insulin starts to fall and the body is beginning to enter a state of ketosis where it's shifting energy states. It's shifting from burning sugars to beginning to burn fats. Between hours 18 and 24, ketosis is well underway and a hormone called glucagon is rising. And why would glucagon rise? Because as this hormone rises, it's a glucoregulatory peptide hormone and it counteracts the action of insulin by stimulating the liver to turn stored glucose into sugars. So this is called gluconeogenesis. Remember, we actually take sugar and we store it in our muscles in the form of glycogen. We store it in the liver in the form of glycogen, and we can tap into this reserve energy when our muscles need energy or when we need to put sugar back into the bloodstream. And this happens when we get into a fasted state. Now, between 24 and 48 hours, this is when the real magic begins. This process of autophagy, the body turning on itself to become more efficient at waste elimination, repair, detoxification, and cellular division. You're literally cleaning your body out at a cellular level.
Yeah, so very scientifical explanation.
It's scientific, but I mean, he said a lot of the exact same things that the girl right before him said too. You know, all of these same benefits she kind of mentioned. Again, the one thing that I feel like they're not, like a lot of these people don't really necessarily agree with is how long before you get to like unlock these benefits. You know, some people say, like he was saying, 12 to 16 hours, which is like literally, that's still within that intermittent fasting kind of window, right? You don't have to go like fasting for a long amount of time. While she's talking about like going 5 days, and that's where and then again, the Chris Hemsworth documentary, they were talking about where 3 to 4 days is where all of these benefits, really unlock in your body.
Yeah, I think it's more of like a gradual unlock where like things happen earlier on, but then more and more start to come into play the longer you go. But I wonder if there's like, what's the threshold of like too much? Like when does it become too much? I haven't heard anybody speak about that yet.
Yeah, like, not here, but I've definitely seen videos of people who are going weeks on just water. Like going in for like 30 days.
There must be diminishing returns after a certain point, don't you think? Like
I would assume so. You know, I would assume so that after a certain amount of time, it's just not. Beyond the fact that it's like, diminishing returns, I feel like at some point, like it just becomes like pretty dangerous and just like at some point, like our bodies are made. Yes, there's some of these benefits, but at some point, like you can't deny the fact that our bodies need all of those nutrients.
Yeah, you'll become
function,
malnourished
right?
after a certain amount of time.
You need these nutrients. Like I know that maybe, and this is something I definitely 100% agree with, that maybe our biology still didn't get used to the fact that we have just so much abundance. Like this is relatively, like somebody was saying in an earlier video, this is relatively new to us as human beings. Like having such a so much food in our lives. This is not something that we have done for a very long period of time as a species, where we just like wake up in the morning, have some food, then snack, then have some more food, then snack some more, then have some more snacks, and then some more food. Like we didn't do that for very long. Like this is like a very recent, if you just look at how long we've been on this earth and how long we've been doing that, that's probably like a very, very, very short period of time. So I'm sure like on a very simple biological level, like I'm sure that our bodies are not really used to it. And that's why I feel like there's so many like, health issues that are related to overconsumption of food. Not only the overconsumption of food in general, but obviously also the quality of the food, but also just the quantity of just how much we consume. So I do see the benefits of like maybe not eating as much. But like you said, there's probably a point after which, like, you've probably done too much. Like, you still need these nutrients. You still need to eat sometime.
Men that fast up to 5 days, luteinizing hormone, which is a precursor to testosterone, actually goes up 67%. Okay? 67% luteinizing hormone goes up. Frame everything like I told you back at the beginning through survival purposes. Another hormone that adds to us maintaining muscle and really helping to mobilize body fat is growth hormone. Growth hormone, the studies show, will go up 2 to 3,000%, 2,000 to 3,000% when we start getting into this 1 meal a day and beyond. You know, that 1 meal a day is pretty sweet. You get into a 48-hour fast, 2 to 3,000%. Bodybuilders really use growth hormone to really tap into their fat source. Growth hormone is very, very good at helping us maintain muscle. So the hormones are in your favor when we are fasting, and you become more insulin sensitive. As Mountain Dog, aka John Meadows, when he was coaching me for a number of years, really hammered into my brain, as well as Charles Poliquin, the more insulin sensitive you are, the easier it is to put on muscle. So yes, I even use my system to help people put on muscle.
Okay, interesting. So he's framing it through like bodybuilding perspective, that it could even be applied for bodybuilders to boost growth hormone. 2 to 3,000%. That seems like a lot when you start intermittent fasting. I don't know. I cool.
Like he's
I
just
guess.
basically talking about like hormonally, like all the changes that goes through your body that apparently is helping, you know, with muscle growth. Again, this goes to me like so strongly against all this stuff that, you know, and this wasn't that long ago.
The
Like
bodybuilding culture.
yeah, we're not talking that long ago. And I'm even sure today there's so many people that are still under the, you know, make sure that you gotta eat big. If you want to get big, you gotta eat big.
Yeah, different philosophies for
Very
sure.
different.
But if you're doing like that dirty bulk style of, you know, bodybuilding, then
Sam
guess,
Sulek style.
yeah, like I guess you're not too concerned about, you know, the quality of like the hormones and stuff like going through your body and whatever. Like you're just doing, everything is external. You're just like packing in from externally and not worrying too much about how you're helping your own body to produce things to kickstart your muscle growth. You're just like consuming.
Right, because when it comes to putting on muscle or just like, you know, in terms of like just maintaining your weight, like there's still so many people that are basically, you know, advocating for how like the simplicity of it is just like calories in versus calories out. And that's basically where the conversation, you know, stops. They just go, well, how much do you consume versus how much you exert like throughout your day? Well, that's workouts of just you breathing and living and even sitting or, you know, walking to the fridge, like all of that, all of these things are consuming, you know, calories and energy. So how much do you consume versus how much you exert throughout the day? And that's basically the only thing that you need to pay attention to when it comes, are you going to put on weight or are you going to lose weight? And a lot of these people even even say like it doesn't even matter, like the qualities of the calories is not as important, which
Well,
I think it goes a little crazy.
Because like let's face it, being interested in bodybuilding and practicing bodybuilding, it does not correlate 100% with being a healthy person.
Correct.
Right.
100%. Yes.
So like it's like where's the crossover for you? Like where does your interest in bodybuilding overlap with your interest in health?
Yeah.
Right. That's a question that you need to ask yourself too. Like what am I willing to do to get these results, and like what do I want to get out of it? Do I just want to be massive or do I want to be really healthy?
I guess this is the question that you should be asking yourself, and you know, right from the beginning, this is where the conversation really should start: is why are you doing it? Right? You have to be very, very clear with yourself about like and research the why behind fasting. Right? So why? First of all, like the why is going to also potentially influence the type of fasting that you're going to be potentially doing. Like, are you going to be doing like the 1 meal a day? Are you going to do like the 16-8 split that we talked about? Are we going to experiment with going a little bit longer, 48 hours, 72 hours, you know, 4 days, 5 days, going into like these, or even longer? Like you have to be very clear with yourself about the why, right? Not just doing it because it's fashionable and like people like Chris Hemsworth or other celebrities are, you know, advocating and talking about, but understanding the why are you doing it specifically for you. Relating it not only to like the health benefits, but also like to your lifestyle, to your personal goals, to your personal like your body and all that stuff. Which is something that again we talked about in like some of our previous, you know, topics, our previous topic, where you know people don't do enough. They just see someone else do it and like, oh, that's so cool. Chris Hemsworth or whatever it is did 4 days or 5 days. I'll just do the same thing without really stopping and thinking, wait, does that also align with my lifestyle, with my goals?
Yeah.
Like maybe his lifestyle is probably very different than yours.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of the videos that we've seen, and even the ones that we haven't shown, but we just kind of like skimmed over online, are treating fasting as like a hack for weight loss.
Yeah.
Which is to me not the approach that I would suggest taking with it. For me, the way that I do it, and because I learned about this years ago and I've been doing it for quite a while, is I just want to feel good and optimize my health as much as I can. So like those are the two main reasons why I do it. And it just so happens that it's good for maintaining a healthy body weight and like all of that stuff. Like, you know, look good, feel good, all those things go together. But if people are looking for a quick fix or they just want to drop 10, 15, 20 pounds quickly and like they think that this is a great way to do it, I would probably not suggest even bothering, because, you know, you really want to be in the right frame of mind when you approach things like this, because I mean, like, you know, eating disorders are a thing too, right? You know, you don't want to like start screwing around with the way that you mentally approach food
Yes.
and eating. Like that can be really harmful and damaging. So you want to come to it from a healthy place, do it because it's good for you and not because you're desperate to get some sort of like result out of it.
For sure, this is something that's not been talked about, but like other factors are also like really, really, really important. And things like, you know, eating disorders, I can see definitely like potential issues with fasting, where people would go like, you know what, I'm just going to fast for a few days. They would obviously potentially feel less bloated and feel like their stomachs would be more flat, or, you know, they would feel like, you know, lighter or whatever. But then obviously when you start eating again, like you're going to start replenishing some of that, and like the food is going to be in your stomach, so maybe your stomach is going to look a little fuller. And I just see the potential of being going, oh, you know what, that's maybe I need to go on another one and another one, and come to a point where it's just obviously you know, extremely unhealthy, where they're just messing up with their entire system and going through one fast and another fast and so forth.
And I also think like this is maybe like a little bit more of like an out there concept, but I think two people can be doing exactly the same thing, but for two different reasons. And, you know, it might seem to somebody from the outside that they're doing identical things, but they're getting different things out of it emotionally, mentally. You know, when you're coming to something from out of a place of like desperation, like oh, I hate my life, I need things to change and this and that, versus doing something because, oh, there's potential in this, like I can be a better version of myself, I can feel good, you know, I can and like those have serious impacts. Like they're it's not to be taken lightly, like the mental mind frame that you're in when you're doing these things.
Which to me personally also raises the same question that I often have about these topics and these types of, you know, very fashionable types of things that people are doing, is the placebo effect. You know, how much of it really comes down to just you, because you convince yourself that you're going to have like better mental clarity or all of these things. Like how much of that is just literally the belief that you're going to, you know, have that, you know, eureka moment, and like, oh, start like, is it really because of the fasting, or is it because you feel like you're doing something? And obviously this is like quite extreme to a lot of people, especially going 3 days. I'm sure like that's completely outside of like anything that you have done, or even close to, you know, the stuff that you have done before. And obviously like just the fact that you're doing something very, very different that you believe is going to, is there a placebo effect there is my question.
There probably is. I mean, but I think like placebo effect, maybe, but also I think just like if you have a positive approach to something, you're more likely to make better decisions, and you're more open to positive feedback from others, and find opportunity in things. Whereas if you're coming to something from like more of a negative, or like, you know, my life sucks and I need to change something aspect, you're really coming from a place of negativity, and you're gonna see the negativity. You might miss the positives that can come out of it.
Yeah. If we can put our stamp on it and kind of end this conversation on fasting in general, what would it be? What would your perspective be on how would you approach it? Because I feel like there's also, in terms of source of information, obviously beyond just like doing your research on things like TikTok, I feel like there's also like, there isn't a general consensus, you know, with like different health professionals. Like I feel like, you know, a doctor was like, I don't know if you watched, there's a bunch of videos of talking about the fact that doctors are like severely undereducated when it comes to nutrition, and how they, throughout their entire, you know, 10 years, 8 years or whatever of studies, that they've only maybe, if you're lucky, gone through like a handful of hours talking specifically about nutrition. And maybe a nutritionist is someone that you want to talk, like if you're watching this and you want to experiment with that, would you recommend consulting with, and how and who would you talk to?
Yeah, find a nutritionist. I guess. I mean, it doesn't hurt to consult a doctor. Like, I don't think all the doctors are the same. You know, I think like a lot of them are unfortunately, you know, like agents of the pharmaceutical industry.
Right,
But,
that's a completely different topic. Yes,
you know,
yes.
and don't really take nutrition as seriously as they should, or like you said, don't have the education. But if you can find a nutritionist to talk to, or if a friend or somebody that you know who might be doing this, and just like ask them what their experience has been like. Try doing it alongside someone. Like when I did the 72-hour fast, I did it at the same time as a friend, and we were texting each other. How do you feel now? How do you feel today? Oh, did you sleep well last night? That type of thing.
Did you feel like his results were different than yours at all, or was it exactly the same?
They were pretty similar.
Yeah?
I have to say, like we
Okay.
both felt like energized towards
Okay.
the end, which is counterintuitive because you'd think when you don't have any food in your system, you would feel sluggish, and we
Yep.
did for certain periods at the beginning, but like you just get a massive boost of energy towards the end. And
Really?
yeah, so it was great. And I did that after having done like months and months of intermittent fasting. So I worked my way up pretty gradually. So like that's another recommendation is if you're interested in it, then start it slowly. And I would even recommend just like in a very simple sense, like if you're the type of person who snacks before bed, just start by cutting that out. You know, like
I think that's good advice for anyone, really. Just like the snacking altogether.
Yeah.
Just stick to your meals, whatever your goals are. Like I feel like just for health, bodybuilding, whatever it is, because I feel like snacking already for a lot of people entails that you're eating stuff that you really shouldn't, be eating. And if you just stick to your meals, I feel like already that's a really good like a step in the right direction. Just saying if you're gonna eat 3 meals or you're gonna eat 2 meals or just 1 meal, just stick to that.
Yeah. If you're somebody who feels like you've lost control of your eating habits, then yeah, start by that. Start by cutting out one thing, and then you'll get used to that. And then it'll be like, okay, well, now I don't eat after dinner anymore until I go to bed. Now I'm going to push my breakfast back by an hour or two. And then I'm going to eliminate it completely. And then I'm going to, do this and this and kind of like build your tolerance over time. And then you can get to the crazy stuff like 24, 72, 5-day, 30-day walking in the desert, no water, that type of crazy stuff.
I mean, I really don't think that it should go. Like, I know that certain animals, like, like, so they say, like, oh, like this, I don't know, camel, they only eat, like, or whatever, or the last drop of water that they had was, like, last year or something like that. You know what I mean? I mean, like, what is the right amount for human beings? Is it really every day, or do we also have, or used to have like a certain, threshold where we could go completely fine for like a week or I don't know, a few days between meals.
I wouldn't be surprised if human tolerance has diminished, in the short time
Sure.
that we've had like,
Yeah.
comfortable amenities and access to all this food and stuff. Like I'm sure that our ancestors had way higher tolerances for these things than maybe we have, but it doesn't mean that you can't work on it and that it's not worth testing yourself a little bit once in a while, because I think that's important.
I feel like, yeah, exactly. That's another thing. Like your body just gets used to things, and I feel like fasting is probably one of those things as well. Like if I think right now, like skipping a shower one day is like the craziest thing, and I was like, I just feel so, I just don't feel right. And then not that long ago, like he was like, oh, I took a shower like last year, and that was completely fine. And people like live like that, and I just can't even imagine a world like. So I feel like maybe with eating, it's something very similar. Like people get used to things, and then it just becomes the norm. It just becomes the normal. It's like very even difficult to like for us to comprehend that you can go 30 days. But maybe this is something that when people just didn't have so much food as much as we do was maybe more normal. Maybe not 30, maybe a little bit less than that, but.
Yeah, exactly. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. And if you have suggestions for future topics for us to discuss, let us know about them in the comments because we're open to pretty much anything. So until next time, this is Somewhere in the Middle. I'm Rob.
And I'm Lion. Take care, guys.
Bye.